Comprehensive planning for student success. Student-led IEPs, Module 3, Lesson 1. I want to begin by talking about self-advocacy, but first, some humor. What is a teacher's favorite nation? Explanation. Thank you. I'll be here all night. Okay, so would you call yourself a leader? Do you have the self-advocacy skills to stand up for yourself to achieve a goal? What would it take to be a self-advocate? Now that I think about it, it's quite complicated. These self-advocacy and leadership skills require that I or anyone else has the ability and, quite frankly, the confidence to stand up for oneself. We need the knowledge of what to advocate for in achieving a goal. We need the ability to be assertive and even negotiate, communicate, and use interpersonal skills. The skills and others are all going to be crucial when our students begin to promote their interests and goals once outside of IDEA protection. How are we preparing them for that? In post-school employment, in the community as a whole, students will need to communicate with peers, community members, and others. They will need those self-advocacy and leadership skills to assist them in being understood and supported. For both school and work, we all have to work in teams, sometimes as the leader and sometimes as a cooperative member. You can begin supporting this very early in school years by designing simulation and identifying real situations where students can practice advocating for themselves in safe environments. These models and practice situations must look like what students will face in the everyday community and employment settings. Here are some ideas: volunteering in the community, ordering a meal at a restaurant, attending an event, emailing or texting, or interacting with coworkers. These are the kind of real generalized situations students need to self-advocate, so we can start simulating and setting up practice to complete these kind of tasks. Now, when your students are ready and you have them prepared with some skills, student-led IEPs can be a great opportunity to practice in a real situation beyond simulations. According to EDDie 2010, students reported that participating in IEP and transition service planning helped them be self-determined in college. Graduis 2014 found for students to acquire self-determination skills, they needed instruction in safe settings in which to practice these skills. Hughes et al. 2013 found that active participation in IEP meetings will not occur without instruction. Student-led IEPs or SLIEPs, or in Georgia, we've had an initiative called Aspire, which was a format for student-led IEPs. This is just a way for students and family involvement to be increased and have more representation in the IEP process. Students play a larger role in developing and implementing their IEP, and therefore they have more ownership, and the IEP becomes more student-centered. And it's a great way to start building those self-determination skills. Providing support for student self-determination in school settings is one way to enhance student learning and improve important post-school outcomes, and to meet federal mandates by actively involving students with disabilities in the IEP, or Individualized Education Planning process. That's a quote from DC and Ryan, 2004. Do we remember who DC and Ryan are?
You should be a part of your IEP meeting because it's not just my voice, it's also your voice that deserves to be heard.
It's more fun than it sounds.
You have to participate in the meetings, talk to your teachers.
If you don't participate in your meetings, you're not going to have a role in your education.
You have a voice and you get control. You can be able to control your future.
It's important about me.
It's definitely helped me be more positive about things.
It's about what they want to know, what I do in school that they don't even know about.
I was nervous at first, but I really enjoyed it. I want to do it a lot. I want to do it a lot more.
Get really excited when you get in there.
Talk to the principal. I know a lot of the times it can be intimidating, but they're there to help you.
It's your life, so basically it's your choices, not theirs.
Thank you for coming to my meeting.
I love it. Let's do some comparison of traditional IEPs versus student-led IEPs. In a traditional IEP, a student might have little knowledge or purpose for the meeting, the IEP and its contents, or his or her disability. And adult team members generally take the lead in determining the content of the IEP. But in a student-led IEP, the student is aware of the purpose for the meeting. The student contributes to the content of the IEP document and understands his or her disability. The student helps determine the content of the IEP and how it will be discussed at the meeting. We're not talking about a student running an entire meeting. And we're not talking about a very young student having to process a diagnosis of a disability. This can all be worked out for what the student's ready for and what the parent's ready for. But a student can and should know about him or herself, should know about the things that the student prefers, things that the student has difficulty with while at school. And there are ways to structure the student's preparation for an IEP meeting so that they can not only contribute, but they can be there and understand that there is a meeting and that meeting is about them. Our goal is for teachers to make the paradigm shift and see the possibilities for everyone. So the next few slides are going to help illustrate the possibilities. So assuming if you're a teacher, I want you to think for a moment about a typical IEP meeting and consider the level of student and parent participation at the meeting. Jim Martin and the Zero Center in Oklahoma observed IEP meetings and found that special ed teachers spoke 51% of the time during the meeting. That family spoke about 15% of the time, and the students only about 3%. Let's take a look at how a student-led IEP might change those numbers. In a traditional IEP, the student may not be participating or discussing or decision-making. It wouldn't be valued by students or the general ed teacher or the parents because it's about really what the student can't do. But what we're finding in student-led IEPs is that the student is often the discussion leader and can present the information in different ways. It emphasizes capabilities, and meetings have improved participation as parents and teachers respond to invitations from the student. In a traditional IEP, parents and students may not understand the connection between accommodations and instruction, and the IEP might not really reflect the student's interests or the student's concerns. But with a student-led IEP, the students and parents have a better understanding of student accommodation and their role in instruction, and the IEP reflects the intent to increase the student's voice in educational decisions. And it reflects that student's personality. We're hearing anecdotal information that accommodations discussions are being more real. Students are learning the importance of understanding their accommodations if they attend college, in the workplace, and what is needed to stay safe in their community. Have you ever had a student with a laundry list of accommodations that the mom wants them to have, but the accommodations aren't working for the student? Think about how powerful it is for mom to hear the student say it's not working. But this is what works. By utilizing a student-led IEP model, the IEP meeting becomes a cooperative experience of working together to assist the student. You may have noticed in the videos that the tone of the student-led IEP is such that it reduces the likelihood of contentious meetings. Having the student present for some or all the meeting sets the stage for a productive, collaborative meeting. We're going to look at some possibilities for participation. Think about a student you might like to work with and think about which of these items on the next few slides would be an appropriate starting point for your student. An invitation created by a student does not replace the legal document, but being creative and age appropriate, a preschooler could make a construction paper invitation, or a middle schooler could compose or send an email, and a high school student could send text invitations or reminders. Discussing goals for life after high school and how to reach them, the transition plan is something that every 8th through 12th grader should already be involved in. Consider having the students complete the transition plan in their own words and talk about it at the meeting. Perhaps they've learned SDLMI goal-setting procedures, so they're comfortable writing goals, so they can actually write their own transition plan. You may have to translate it into legalese, but think of a time it could save not having to come up with some cookie-cutter words to insert into the document. Your students doing these things to participate in their IEP meeting. Now you have an article posted in the module by Held, Thoma, and Thomas. And I really have held on to this article because it gives a great example of a real case for a student to be participating and have participated in an IEP meeting. So hopefully that you've read the article and you understand the premise and the curriculum used. But here I'm just going to review the steps and the process of this student, John Jones, participating in his IEP meeting. The first thing that they did was decide what the student wants to be able to do and how to measure their accomplishments. I find it very interesting that John Jones just loved The Price is Right and he loves watching the news. So by understanding more about the student, we can determine what perhaps they would be able to do and how they would consider something to be an accomplishment. In step 2, they had to determine the curriculum. Here we have a number of different possibilities that Field in 1996 offered. Perhaps the Steps to Determination curriculum, which is 18 sessions, and it uses an integrated environments with existing courses and parent participation, and it emphasizes cooperative learning using role-playing and modeling. The Choice Maker Self-Determination Transition Curriculum, it offers lesson plans and videos to help students become comfortable with the IEP process, and it gives them a strong voice in the IEP process. The Choice Maker curriculum is now fully free and available on the internet with teacher manuals, handbooks, materials, etc. iPlan strategy promotes increased student involvement in educational planning processes and is taught in small groups with a format over 1 to 2 weeks of 45-minute lessons. The iPlan mnemonic is used to facilitate student involvement in the IEP meeting. It increases the number of student contributions. And we're going to be talking about that iPlan strategy in a bit more detail. Project Partnership Core course is a model program for increasing self-determination through the art. 20 to 40 sessions teaching visual arts, creative movement, music, drama, creative writing. It gives students opportunities to establish a goal and make a plan to accomplish it, make choices, work independently, initiate plans, and self-evaluate in very motivating and reinforcing ways. And Life-Centered Career Education is a functional skills curriculum based on daily living skills, occupational guidance and preparation, and personal social skills. It emphasizes self-awareness, self-confidence, choice and decision-making, and goal attainment behaviors. So these are just a few ideas for curriculum in addition to any of the self-determination curriculum that you may already know about, such as the I'm Determined curriculum and the SDLMI, as well as previous Aspire lesson plans. Step 3 is to develop a portfolio, and that's with a path plan and goals at a glance. To do this, you start with one, which is Touch the Dream. You can see already this is a lot like the SDLMI. What is it that the student would like to achieve? And then the student has to think about, like, well, what is the barrier now that to meeting this dream? And that is how the student can develop a goal to take a step toward reaching that dream. And then you think about, what do I do now? What people do I need to get involved to help me? What do I need to do to learn and be stronger? What's my first step? What will I do in a month and then in the next few months? And then you reevaluate your goal and then return the process. So within the PATH plan and the goals at a glance, John Jones created a portfolio with sections on jobs, living on my own, education and training, and personal life. So as you can see, this aligns with his transition plan. So within his practice of the PATH plan and goals at a glance, he is developing goals and a process for his transition plan. Notice that it wasn't just about John Jones presenting his present level performance at the IEP meeting. No, it was more. It was about him developing the understanding of who he was, what he was good at, and what he may need to work on based on what he liked and wanted to achieve. He practiced skills for self-determination and self-advocacy. And he put together a portfolio to have something to take with him. The IEP meeting was just an opportunity to have a safe but real practice of using these skills. So you can't think of it as just having the student fill out a form and showing up at the beginning of the IEP meeting. The idea is that it's all an opportunity to be more self-determined. And at the IEP meeting, it's nice to know that it's such a student-centered, positive experience then in the end. Attributions are the assignment one makes about the cause of success and failures. We've learned about this. We've learned failures cause students to have lower self-esteem, willingness to take risks, and decrease motivation. We need to be taking risks and be motivated. These students attribute failures to lack of ability and success to luck. This is opposed to students attributing failure to the environment and success to overcoming these environmental obstacles. So by group sharing of accomplishments, we can begin to discuss what those obstacles are and have a more focused approach at removing the obstacles or barriers as opposed to just assuming that they are unchangeable. Step 5 is peer mentoring. It includes peers training, and that makes flexible grouping possible. It provides powerful models for students and good age-appropriate ideas. So this goes back to what we discussed on self-realization, or knowing one's strengths and what one is capable of. We achieve this by acting on knowledge of ourselves to capitalize on our strengths. And that is influenced by the evaluation of others and how we compare ourselves to others. So by involving typically developing peers as mentors, it's a good piece of the intervention that we can help to analyze where we are in terms of our strengths and areas that we need to try to accommodate and persevere. And step 6 is for students that may have difficulties or barriers with the actual communication. We need to really be looking at technology for a voice. In the John Jones Show, he used a PowerPoint. He learned how to use PowerPoint, and it allowed him to take his interest in game shows and to develop an entertaining and motivating format for him to have a presentation for his IEP meeting. And that's when the John Jones Show was born. They used photos and music for personalization. And then, in order to tell the story or the points to be made, one of his peers, one of the peer mentors, was a voiceover on the PowerPoint. Some other technologies might be a video recorder, speech to text, using Photo Story or Video Puppet or a voice recorder. But it was noticed in Helms et al. 2004 article, that was the John Jones Show, was that having a peer voiceover in the presentation was received positively over computerized voice. And then step 7 was they practiced the presentation with a peer. Now, I've had a lot of teachers come to me and say, I'm really trying to get student-led IEPs going, but I had the student already, took him to the meeting, and he froze up. And then it didn't really go over so well when he couldn't participate like was expected. And I asked, well, did you practice? And of course, no, he was a part of the whole process, but if you don't actually simulate and practice, it can be quite an intimidating environment. And these practice sessions and these simulations and role playing is the best way to teach any of those self-advocacy skills. The IEP is just an opportunity to practice it in a real event, but that doesn't mean that you skip over the practice and role play. So we need to practice, develop possible questions and prepare those answers. Use the presentation at the IEP meeting to facilitate the entire meeting process. When John Jones stepped up and his slide came up and it said, "Welcome to the John Jones Show. Would everyone please introduce themselves?" The tone of the meeting became so positive and so John Jones oriented that everyone left, if not in tears, just so proud and ready to do whatever it took to help John meet his goals. So the final message from the John Jones Show is as follows. We need to emphasize self-determination over our own plans for a person. Give students opportunities to recognize choices and choose. We want to integrate self-determination instruction across the day and environments, use peers as mentors, and use technology to give students a voice.